Hi, everybody. Welcome back. For those of you who are following along our mining series, this is the desktop mining episode 4. And we started off with episode 1, which had NiceHash and a couple of desktops. Then we went to episode 2, where we worked with MinerGate, again on a couple desktops. And then we went to episode 3, still using MinerGate, but we used an HP server, which is really used for other things, more of a high-end server, nothing really customized for mining. So since that part was done, we only had one thing left to accomplish, and that is to make a mining rig. Now, we said we weren't going to go crazy and buy a 6 GPU mining rig and do all the stuff involved in that. We were just going to start off with a couple of video cards. And sure enough, we couldn't get a video card from anywhere that was new. So we got lucky and found some on eBay, although I don't know about the word lucky. We paid a little more than we should have and found some video cards on eBay. And this video is going to take us through kind of building this rig. We're not going to go into a lot of details of, how we built it, 100% what memory stick we used and what motherboard we used. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose still goes along from the beginning of just trying to find out if things are profitable. And we definitely have invested some money in trying to figure that out, including with this equipment. So we'll kind of go through the process, a few of the parts, some of the components we use to help us measure and do traditional things. And of course, as you've probably seen in just about every video I've ever made, a spreadsheet with some calculations. Because without that numbers, none of this serves purpose. We can pretend like we're making money, but the numbers tell the truth. So rather than try to walk around and show you components and hold everything with one hand and display it with the other, what I decided to do is just grab some real quick and messy videos just to show you some of the equipment and just talk about it, and that's the way we're going to do it. So I'm just going to click play here on this first video. And this is an existing motherboard at the office. This is an i7 Intel motherboard, and that doesn't really matter since we're mining. The processor really has nothing to do with it. This is just to hold the actual graphics cards and make them run. And as you can see here, we've got the first video card slot and then a second video card slot. So this is a little bit of a multimedia motherboard, a higher end one. This is one of the nicer i7 type processors. So this is the reason we picked this particular system, is because it did have the 2 video cards. So this is where we'll be building it, and we've got a nice power supply there, which handles the 2 video cards plus a little bit more. You can see a couple of fans, some memory, which is overkill for this particular box, and then a mess of cables that we're going to have to clean up to kind of create better airflow for this system. Otherwise, the video cards are going to get a little bit hot. Here we've got the first Radeon, which is a reference series Radeon. It's got 4 gigs of RAM. It's an RX 480, so probably one of the better mining video cards. And then this is also an RX 480, but this one is an overclock edition, which is sporting 8 gigs of RAM. So this is the equipment we're going to be using. And we actually mined for a day with just the reference card. And then we mined afterwards for just about a day now with the second card in so that we could get a higher hash rate. And we actually bought a little converter, a PCIe to USB type of converter, which allows us to put in another video card, but since there's no more video card slots, we get to put it into a PCIe slot. So we got one of those to test out as well, and we in fact did order a third video card. Now, something else that we did for this setup is, as usual in our videos when we're measuring power, we use a kilowatt. And you can see here a kilowatt, which has actually got this mining rig plugged into it. This is with it just turned on and nothing really going on at 89 watts. And then we bought this new device, which is going to allow us to actually monitor the power, but to record it as well. So a little bit better than just seeing the numbers as we're standing there watching the kilowatt, but actually having the information available on your phone and getting to see it. So that's going to be a cool addition to help us get maybe even a little more details for the mining. And let's see if there was anything else that we wanted. I think here we've got, I don't know why we videoed it, but this is one of these riser cards where you put your video card in here. You've got this part that goes into a PCIe slot, and you can see the USB cable that connects the two. So this is what we're going to be using to test the third video card in the same rig once it comes in. I actually took the video card out thinking it might be interesting to see it run sitting on our desk. So here's a video of the first video card being inside, and instead of using the second slot, just for testing purposes, here's the video card running on the outside of the case. Now, this required, let me just go backwards there a second. Go right about there. So this required that, of course, that's a little adapter, which has a power cable that comes from the regular power supply. And then, of course, we've got the video cable right here on the edge, which goes to the actual video card. This one used an 8-pin video cable, and the other reference video card only used a 6-pin video cable. So this one uses a little bit more power. I'm assuming the extra memory is what does it, and that's probably why that's happening there. And the rest of this video really doesn't make a difference. Both of these are MSI, by the way, which were maybe a little bit easier to do things with, and that's why I picked them. But I think as long as you're getting an RX 480, that's a great card. And based on some initial tests, I think probably those 8 gig cards are a little bit better. And definitely not buying a reference series card would also perform better, because the non-reference cards probably have some more flexibility in being able to overclock them. And that makes a difference in the results that we've had. So let's get started on looking at some more of the details besides just the physical rig. At this point, what I did is I went ahead and went to simplemining.net. Here's the actual site itself. And we downloaded the software, installed that. And again, this is not a video about how to set it up. This is really trying to get to the goal of what we talked about, which is trying to do some quick mining, simple. We're not going to build a mining rig that has a fancy frame and do all these crazy things. We're just going to try to use a basic, quick method of measuring the value of mining and seeing if it's profitable. So again, simple mining was just an easy way to do this. I probably would run it on a Linux box in the long run if I was going to maintain running this rig, which theoretically we're going to. So we'll probably have to go backwards and do something for this box to make it a little bit different. And we'll experiment between different software running it on different platforms. I think Windows is probably not the platform we want. So in this case, Simple Mining does use Linux. It can be formatted onto a USB drive, and you boot up on that drive, and boom, you're running the operating system they have. I'm just going to make sure we're still connected. And so this had a lot of pretty cool features that allows you to set up, in this case, not only each rig, and you'd have multiple rigs here listed, but you can also set up rig groups. So I'm just going to go to my rig groups a minute. And what we did at first is we set up some dual mining where we did Decred, I'm not sure how they actually named that particular coin, as well as Ethereum. And we configured this miner to do both at the same time. Now, the effect of that was we were mining with a little less horsepower for Ethereum, but we were mining the other coin as well. Well, the payout for that coin was so low, I decided it didn't make any sense to mine it. Let's just go all Ethereum for now. There are days where, it's the other way around, where you want to mine the two in order to maximize your profits. We also made a couple of different pools, and we decided let's just do only Ethereum, and we tried Etherpool and Noobpool. Both look like they're pretty good pools. One's a monster in the size of it. The other seems like a nice smaller pool. The guys were actually very responsive. I sent an email, they emailed back. So I think these are some good guys to hang out with. And we're not going to talk too much about pools and how they work and all that. That's a pretty complicated, very long story. Again, we're just going to try to do surface of all these little details in order to get to the good stuff, which is the mining. So we use this tool, and one of the things I want to share with you is it's a pain in the butt to set up a system. and to get everything working and to deal with all the settings and make sure it's going as fast as it can. The hardware didn't show up, whether it was in Windows, you overclocked it, the performance wasn't there. I mean, there's just a slew of things that actually get in your way to where you're spending literally 7 hours working on this. Now, once you've done it once, you know it and you're ready to go on. In my case, I have the advantage of, the fact that we're IT people. We understand this stuff pretty well, operating system wise, hardware wise, and we still took a lot of time to get these details working. So anyway, we're just going to go into this and highlight a couple things. One interesting thing is here under status, you can see that it's on. And when I highlight this, you can see that total restarts is 90. Now, this rig's been up 17 hours. It was actually up a little bit before then. Let me take a quick look at what it says here. Program 10.4, 10.5. Yeah, so it was on a little bit during the 3rd, when we first got the rig with the with the reference card rather than both cards. But that was how we were going to measure the quality of, each card and then put together to get an overall reading. And of course, since we didn't have the second card, we didn't have much choice. We didn't want it to just sit there collecting dust. So this 90 times just shows you how many settings changes we made. We had to reboot it. It didn't work. And, further emphasizes how much work it is and how complicated it can be. Some just really quick settings that you have here. This little icon of a video card allows you to see what's happening at the actual screen. So if we were standing at the screen, which I'll show you a video of in a second, and watching the rig, we would be seeing the same information that's here, with the exception of the screen has it in color, so it's a little easier to spot different types of events. Now this is actually live, so if something is going to scroll, like it just did right now, we're seeing it real time. So let's see right here. We can see we've got 52 mega hash, and we've taken 781 shares since we turned on the rig the last time, which who knows when that was, just because we're making changes and tweaking and stuff like that. And we're seeing that GPU 0 has 29 mega hash. That's the 8 gig overclock version of the RX 480 from MSI. And then here, the second GPU, which is labeled GPU 1, is 22 mega hash, and that's the reference series MSI card, RX 480, with 4 gigs of RAM. It's not about the RAM in this case, it's about the way it overclocks. And so this one, we couldn't really get it to run any faster than this. With all the tweaks that we did, it really crashed out several times, and we were stuck right there. Now, there may be some guys who overclock a lot more frequently than we do, and we might reach out to them for a little bit of help to see if there's any way to magically boost that number, because we were really banking on having somewhere around 28 mega hash for that particular card. And then the 8 gig version, which is an overclock version, I really wasn't expecting it to be too much faster than the 29 I'm getting. Maybe 30, 31. I think that's, peak. Unfortunately, the second card that we ordered, the third card that we ordered, is also a reference series 4 gig card. Now, that card may actually perform better than this one. And my understanding is that, you could take 40 of the same video cards with the same specs, same capabilities, and they could all have different peaks and valleys that they actually work at. They're not necessarily going to all work at the same settings, unfortunately. So, you might get one that's got a little bit better ASICs and one that has ASICs that aren't quite as good and can't overclock the same, or can't run at a certain temperature or for a certain longevity the same way. So this just gives you an idea of that. Some of the settings here under overclocking allows us to push some parameters. We've got 2 sets of parameters here since it's 2 video cards. It allows us to push some parameters to the actual unit. At the same time, it allows us to do some power settings, and they just came out with this undervolting, which they spelled wrong here. But it allows you to push some power settings to try to reduce the power. And we'll look at the power of this in a second because it's pretty ugly. So we'll close that. We'll just go back to the rig groups for one moment, and we'll just use the one we're actually mining right now on Etherpool. And let's just click on this. And here's a list of all the different types of coins that you could mine based on applications. So if you were going to go and get, let's say, XMR, which is Monero, you would click on this right here, and it would come up with some default options for you, and then you would go and tweak them by hand. Here you could see like a default configuration that they show here in the green, and then we actually just dropped in our own config, which is a little bit simpler. Let me close that. And from here, you could restart the rig, you can reload the settings, and that's pretty much it, as far as what you could do at the rig group. So I didn't want to go too much into this. It's just to give you a general idea of how it works and to show you the application that we're using to run it. So at this point, we're going to grab a little bit more video footage. So let's take a look at the rig and one of the failures as we were getting it running. As you can see here on the kilowatt, let me just press play. It's registering 208, and you can see we got that little blue box adapter that we were testing, and we used them both simultaneously. That way we could tell, hey, are the numbers right? Are they not right? And what's going on with it. And here, let me just actually stop this video and go back a little bit. And let's stop it right there. So the interesting part is the reason we are only getting 200 watts of used power is because right here, GPU 0 registers as 0 megahash, and GPU 1 registered at 0 megahash. So even though the cards have the capability to go faster, the many different configuration attempts shows you here a value of 0, because we're definitely using way more than 200 watts. This was another pass. Let me click here, get that started. And as you can see, I'm just going to hit pause a second. It's downloading the configuration for Ethereum so that it has all the data local that is required. And we should get to the point that we actually see a hash rate pretty soon here. So again, I don't even know which attempt this was. There were just so many attempts. I couldn't even tell you all the things that I tried. There were just so many. And there we go. Let's stop it right there. Find a better spot that's sharper. I guess the video tool is making this a little blurry. Let me go ahead if we see it. All right. So in this video, you can see we were at a 44 megahash rate for both video cards. So we didn't have them quite tweaked to the point that we have them now. So this was at 44 megahash. Then here you could see the GPU 0, which was the bigger card, was at 23.4. That's a pretty big difference. And then we actually got the smaller GPU to work a little better and got it to 21 at this point. So each setting, each time you're attempting it, you accomplish a little more until eventually you've got the thing running the way you want. Now what I want to do is look at some stills to show this utility that came with these blue plugs. So I'm going to grab a picture right here. We'll maximize that. And now this is with it off. So this little blue plug uses Wi-Fi, connects to your network, and then with some software on your cell phone, you're able to communicate to it. Oh, that's an interesting beep from one of the mining pools. So anyway, so once you connect to it, you're able to then manage the information that comes out of this. So when you get your first screen, it looks like this, and you can see test rig 1. And the one thing I didn't like about it was not really something that's bad from the development perspective, but I accidentally pressed the power button here. And in this case, you're actually powering off everything at that blue box. And even though you could power it back on, the box itself may not come back on. Now, this is something that's important. If you've got motherboards that have a setting for power off condition, then you're able to go in there and say, when the power fails and comes back on, return to your last state. Meaning, if the computer was on when the power went off, when the power comes back on again, turn it back on. So in essence, this could give you a way to restart a rig that's screwed up that you maybe can't communicate with. Simple Mining gives you some tools to do that as well, but this was pretty cool. And this is the type of device that people put on to use with Alexa or Chrome, and you just tell it, Alexa, turn off the light, or in this case, turn off test rig 1, and it will, power cycle it. So that's what a lot of people use these for. And let's go grab the second picture, which when you zoom into, or you click rather, on the actual icon, you get the details about that particular plug. So this plug, Test Rig 1, has a real-time power usage of 397 watts. So this was our way of monitoring exactly how much power there was at the rig without being in front of the rig, which was kind of cool. And while you're working on, let's say, simple mining, or if you're using Linux or Windows and you're remoting those operating systems to work on the rig, you can actually see the results on the screen right away. So this was really the reason we bought this, to see this 397, live as it stands. And then the bonus of it was that it records the power being used in the device. So when we first got it and first turned on the rig, this was 2 hours and 20 minutes later, and it's labeled today. We used 0.79 kilowatts in this window of 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that's a decent amount of power. As you saw, we were almost at 400 at that time. And then let's see if we have a more current one. Let me grab the more current one. I think it's in a different folder. Close all these. It's this one. Here we go. And this was one that I took a little while ago, which shows, and again, this says 1 hour and 15 minutes. You have to kind of forgive that because the amount of times that we've turned everything on and off, the numbers get skewed a little bit. But you can see a tiny bit of work on 1.3. Then we've got the measurement from 10.4. And I have no idea why this is saying 10.5, although there may be a time setting in the software that I'm not aware of, or it's using the time of the server that this data is being stored to, because it's not being kept local. It's being kept at the application/hardware developer's server that does the communications between you and the device. So in this case, they must be in a different time zone because they're showing 10.5, and for us, we're here on East Coast time, it's 10:26 p.m. So that's the reason. But in the time that it's been running, and actually that's kind of a little bit of a bummer because it would have been nice to see the total working time here and not just the working time of the day. So this is 1 hour and 15 minutes into 10.5 as far as it's concerned. But the key is here, you can see the power consumption, and this day right here, I would say ran about 80% of the day, maybe 75% of the day, just because of the amount of changes and updates and then take everything out and put it back together. But we ran up to 9.6 kilowatts, which is quite a bit of power. All right, so let's take a look at some of the data that we've collected over these couple of days. Let's go over here to one of the pools. And in this case, let's see what we got here. Okay. So this particular pool was showing a graph a little to the left of this, which kind of faded out with time because it looks like it's a 24-hour snapshot. I don't have the ability to pick, hey, show me the day, show me the week, and so on. I've got to just use what they provide. And what we would have seen there is probably just under half of what these bars are going to on the left, because that was the first time we hooked up the first reference card. And then there would have been a bunch of big gaps because of all the times that we reset the rig and that we did different things. But what's nice is that you can see here when we finally turned it on again, after more modifications, it looks like it was 4:05 a.m. Yes, we're crazy late working people. And at 4:05 a.m. we turned this back on, and it's been on ever since. So finally, we've gotten to the point where we can let a rig sit there and earn money, which is the goal of this. Otherwise, we're going to get a false interpretation of the value of what it can do. Now, this is real time. And so right here, let's see, it shows 10.4, 21.20. And what's nice about this particular mining pool software is if you highlight each of these, you can see how many shares you processed during your time online. And it gives you a pretty interesting graph here that's showing you your reported hash rate, your current effective hash rate, and your average effective hash rate. Now, when we had the 24 and I keep saying 24 for some reason, but we had the first reference card, which is getting probably 124 mega hash in there, and then this was crossed over to the now dual cards that we were using, it really didn't show that orange average effective hash rate for quite some time to come up, because it's measuring something in the long distance time versus short window time. So this did pretty good, and at this point it says that we earned 0.0682 ETH on this particular mining pool. Now this was not the only mining pool we used, as we mentioned before. So let's jump over to that mining pool. And I believe that one is here. Okay, so here's new pool, and this is a smaller pool. The bigger pool probably finds about 15 to 25 blocks a day, which is great because you get very consistent payouts. But the problem is you're one of a gazillion miners, and so your payouts are divided amongst more miners, and they're not as high. In a small pool, you have the opportunity to get higher payouts because there's less of you that are mining for that coin. So it's kind of a catch-22 as to which way to go. And if you were solo mining, then you have a bunch of other issues. Let's say we have our 52 mega hash of power for Ethereum, and we were solo mining, just out to the web, out there doing what we're doing. We could spend, either 5 minutes and get outrageously lucky, find a block and start processing it, and we would get that whole block reward, which is the big bucks. Or we could be on there for 3 weeks, 3 months, even maybe a year, and not find a coin, and then finally find one coin and get one the next day. So mathematically, it takes a long time to find the coin and process it, or basically mine it, if you're not in a pool environment. Now, if you've got some huge rigs, let's say we had 20 rigs and they were pretty good hashing power, then we could mine on our own and have a good chance, or let me not say a good chance, a much better chance than a small rig would have in finding the coin. That's, part of the whole, maybe another video that we need to do to explain some of those details, because everything in mining is in really great detail in different areas. The hardware side of it, the software and settings side of it, the configuration of everything, if you're trying to overclock cards and so on. And then, of course, in this case, there's even assigns to the pools, the different pools, and that type of stuff. How they charge you for being in the pool, how the rewards are shared, the different methods of using pools. So it's its own complexity right there. Let's get rid of this thing. And let's look at one more pool, which was, tag along with this one. I did actually, I didn't realize it. This is the Decred pool, which was the dual mining that we were doing. And here you can see that we have a confirmed 0014 Decred. I want to say that's probably not even a nickel. So, to distract from the amount of money that we were making from Ethereum didn't make sense, and that's why we kind of stopped doing this and just mining Ethereum itself. So let's get rid of that, and let me see if we have any other stats to go into before we jump into my favorite, the spreadsheet.